My name is Sue Aichele, and I am with UNT System HR. I've been with UNT System for over, 5 years now. Time went by so fast, but I have been in HR probably this year going on, 21 years. I like to joke and tell people I started when I was 13, but that joke didn't last. It stopped probably 10 years ago. So, anyhow, today we are going to be talking about um, here's our agenda: reviewing resume, applying, uh, applying, and how to use the applicant system to your advantage, preparing for the interview, and during and after the interview. So in some areas, I will go into more detail than others because some are pretty much given. So I just want to touch on some of the highlights. Okay. So let's talk first about resumes. Okay. There are various styles of resumes that you can choose from. And it really depends on your work experience, whether you are at the beginning stages of your career or a seasoned professional. My warning to you all, first and foremost, is whatever you put on the resume is fair game in the interviews. So there are some times where someone would put that they have a specific skill or experience on a certain software, whatever it may be. And if asked for just deeper context and they don't know, it can come across as lying. So be very cautious when whether you're putting, applied knowledge or you actually had the real hands-on experience. And another thing to keep in mind when writing or editing your resume is that just assume that readers don't know about the company or industry that you're in, unless it's a global company like Microsoft, Apple, DHL, or if you're applying within the institution like at UNT. So we hope that's not the case. However, one of the biggest errors in general is just the lack of contents around industries and employers that they've used to work for. So, another tip that before I talk about the different styles of resume is just spelling out acronyms. And we'll talk more when we talk about the applicant tracking system and how it can be in your favor. So as a recruiter, when I'm looking at resume, is I need your resume to give me some basic information. Just a few words or some sentences will suffice when it comes to your company. And you can easily find this in the About Us page in your organization. So if you worked for a company for maybe a year and you don't know much about it, just go into their page and know and see what they actually put about their organization. So now, styles of resume. Functional. So a functional resume focuses more on your skills, abilities, achievements, instead of just putting it in chronological work history, like the order most people would put, your current, your last one, and prior to that, and so on and so forth. So this resume might have sections that highlight your skills in different categories, or sections that highlight different types of experience that you have. A functional resume typically are used by job seekers that are changing careers or who have gaps in their employment history or just might be new in their career and just have limited work experience. But you want to highlight the pieces of knowledge in your various jobs that you've had that makes you qualified for the job that you're applying for. Okay. Then you have the chronological resume, which is the traditional resume, which is the more preferred. And I admit I am the type that likes this type of resume. So a benefit of a chronological resume format is that it allows you to highlight your work experience in order. It's like I said, it's the most common type, and a lot of recruiters actually prefer this method. A targeted resume is a resume that's customized to highlight your experience and skills that you have relevant to the job that you're applying for. Now, this type of resume takes time. I mean, you're basically tailoring that resume for that job. So if you're applying for 20 different jobs, you're tailoring your resume 20 times. So it does take time and effort. However, it does tend to yield the best results. So because you're highlighting certain areas or certain parts of your resume that you're hoping the hiring manager will see and then contact you for an interview, right? So a combination resume it's a combination of a chronological resume, so your traditional, and a functional resume. So list all your skills, achievements on top of the resume, and then your employment history. So with this type of resume, you can actually highlight the skills that you have that's relevant to the job that you're applying for, and then also provide your work history. So because many employers do want to see traditional resume going in order. And so this is often like a combination is good for those who want to highlight both. So you've had some work experience and you have a specific project that you've done that really pertain to this job that you want them to see. So that way they can select you for the interview. Okay. And the last thing I want to discuss on resumes is if you're applying internationally, do your research and see what that company's reference is. So here in the United States, we don't recommend pictures, right? Nobody put pictures on their resume, but it's a common practice in Canada and some Asian countries. Other countries, if you don't put your marital status, it can be considered as an incomplete resume. True story. So let's talk about now the applicant tracking system. What is an applicant tracking system, or ATS? Parsing, what is that? How do I get my resume past the machine? And then applying through other websites like Indeed and LinkedIn. Oops, on. So what is an applicant tracking system, or ATS for short? Simply is just a software that companies use to recruit and hire. Some are more sophisticated than others. It really depends on the organization, how big it is and how small it is, or how innovative it is. Some have the capability to parse or upload your resume without having you to manually fill it in the application. Just like the system that we have right now, if you were to apply for a staff role or a non-student hourly role, that you can actually upload your resume and it would put your job history in the job history section of the application. So that's what it does, is it parses that information and uploads. Okay. Now, some I have seen are way more sophisticated, where it really takes, you still have to do spot check when it uploads, because not all of them have the best, because it's almost like there's different version, right? There's the basic version of parsing and there's a super fancy version of the parsing. It depends on the company. So you still have to look at, do spot checks. And that's why a lot of recruiters prefer like the traditional, the formatting, the easy, the jobs, just because some parsing software are easier to read from those basic. And if you have a lot of graphics on your resume, it really, it doesn't pull. So, and it makes it look wonky. So now, some of you, now how do I get my resume through the machine, right? Through the bot. And some of you might have heard this a lot. To get your resume, what do I have to do to get my resume to a live person, to a real person? So there's some confusions on that. So I want to explain to you how it works and just explain to you some basic functionality. So let's start. As a candidate, you upload your resume. And depending on how sophisticated their system is, it can scan your resume for keywords. Like Taleo and Workday are the two top softwares, like the two top companies that, or two top softwares that a lot of companies like to use. So what it does is it does matches. So their system will look for keywords. And if your resume have those words, it shows matches and it shows in percentage. For example, I'm a hiring manager and I'm looking for someone technical that have these 10 specific skills. I'll tell the system, I want candidates who have to match maybe 95% of the keywords that I use. So I'm typing the keywords in, right? And it's based from the job description. And it'll rank by percentage. Then a human will actually review them. So what they're looking for specifically is functional skills, not any type of personal attributes like I'm a people person, I'm a team player. Things that are in the job description that are important to do this job. So my tip is to have keywords from the job description in your resume. So the system will highlight those keywords. So if you have more of those keywords, the system will show that you are more qualified. However, overusing it makes the resume read really, really badly. So there's a fine line. Just remember also that it is big business in resume writing. And a lot of, like, if you Google how to get my resume past the machine, all this, a lot of the companies that are writing these stories are all resume writers or all bloggers or all trying to make money. So, and resume writers can charge anywhere from $100 to $500 depending on your needs. Do I recommend them? Not for $500. I would recommend making Google your friend. Also, if you're a subscriber to Office 365 Windows, you actually have a feature that's called Resume Assistant that is free. So when Microsoft bought LinkedIn back in 2016 for like $26 billion, a few years later, they came out with Resume Assistant. So now you do need a LinkedIn account as well, but what it does is it leverages LinkedIn's public profile with its integration to Microsoft. So for example, I have, Microsoft Office 365 Windows. So I'm writing my resume, I'm using the Resume Assistant. If you type in the title recruiter, on your right-hand side, you will see other titles that's similar to what recruiters often call themselves, like talent acquisition, people finder. I don't know, I'm just making people finder up. So after you select the roles and desire in the industry that fits you, the Resume Assistant will actually pull in LinkedIn profiles, other people who have recruiters, so you can see a diverse example of how professionals in that role describe their work. So and the best part is that it will tell you what companies are hiring as well. So it will say, oh, X company, XYZ happens to have an opening for a recruiter. Take a look at their job. So it's a gold mine for people like me who are not great with words. So I'm like, what do I call myself? What's another term for recruiting? Acquisition. What's another term for instead of right clicking, looking for the synonym, it was actually right there. So perfect. So, like a great resume writer or a person with pretty much just knowing how to write or knowing how to use Word. Example, how would you say, I answer phone, I take parts, I order through a computer, I help customers when they call, let's say I do purchasing and cash handling. So a writer will put like inventory management, such as order replacements, log incoming deliveries and warehouse stock supplies, front desk administration, including phones, schedule service appointments, manage dispatch operations, reports and logs. So fancy words, right? For basically answering the phones, taking orders. So that's where your free resources will help you and help elaborate on your resume. So last bullet, applying through websites and other job boards. So when you go to a job board, the site will provide you an option that says apply for this job. The biggest one is Indeed and LinkedIn. And I will tell you, those are the top two job sites right now, and they flip back and forth. 15 years ago, it was Monster. ZipRecruiter is still around, but not a lot of people. And the reason why they're number 1 and 2 is they have great aggregators. And what an aggregator is when I put my job, or we put our job on our company's website, it becomes public domain. So what they do is their aggregators will pull all of our jobs and put it on their job board to capture the job seekers to their job board, right? So when you go onto those job boards, they will say apply here or quick apply. When you do that, make sure it redirects you to the company's page. Like when I go on Indeed and I just double check to make sure our jobs are there, it does direct us to our employment site. like where you can apply, but not all, and not all sites do that. Some sites, you know, when you're actually going in, you're actually creating a profile with that job board. Okay. Some job boards will have you apply with them, which increase their number of applicants for them to promote to companies like ours to gain our business. So what they'll do is they'll tell employers, oh, we have 2 million users who are registered with us. So if you spend money and promote your job openings on our job board, you will have access to these 2 million resumes. Yeah, it's bottom line, it's a way for them to make money, to make a little bit of business. True story. I was at an event and this person came and said, you know, I've applied at your organization for like 20 different jobs and have never heard back. So I looked this person up in our system, don't even see an application at all. And finally, I just, after digging and going through it, and I asked, so how are you applying? And sure enough, this person was going to the job board and thinking that they had applied with us, but in reality was just inputting their information on the job board. And when I told this person this, it's just, their face just went still. And I felt horrible for the person, but at least they know. So as a tip, I always tell people, if you see a job on some type of job board and you click on the apply, make sure it takes you to the company's website. Now, there are some companies that do have the money that will partner up, with the job boards, that you are actually applying with them. And how you know that is if you go to the job site itself and then it takes you to the LinkedIn page. So it takes you back to actually apply. That's how you know. So I always tell people, go directly to the company's website because one, it'll always be up to date. And two, you're for sure applying at that organization. So now putting your information on the job board is not a bad thing. So I want to get that straight. It's actually not a bad thing because I've had used this to where I'm looking for someone and I will look at, okay, I have an opening for this. Let me look at some resume banks. And so these 2 million people that actually registered, I can see that, oh, this person's profile matched what I'm looking for. Let me send them an email to see if they're interested or if they're looking for a job. And I have found people from there. So it's almost like let the system work for you as well. Let the job boards, and it's free for applicants. Let the job board work for you and just put your resume out there. On occasion, go in and update it, because when companies are hiring, they will do these searches. And yes, companies do pay for them. So that's why it's free on your end, but let it work for you, right? So preparation, won't go through this because a lot of it's given, but I put research position and company. I know when you apply for a job, you're not researching the company. You're applying because you see the position open. Most people don't research the company until they've been called for an interview. Okay. However, if you get a call, I always tell people, let it go to voicemail. And then if it's someone from XYZ company that you applied for, then research the company and remember how you applied or why you applied, because it irks. This is me too, but I've talked to other recruiters, is that when someone say, oh, I have applied for several places, who are you again? It just puts a wrong feeling. And a lot of people don't like it. It's almost like kind of slap them in the face in a sense. So I always tell people, if you get a voicemail from XYZ company that you applied for and you don't remember because you applied at 50 different places, go back and look where you applied, go online and research. Just do basic research, because a lot of times they might ask you, so why'd you apply with us, or how'd you know about us? So dress code. So unless you're told by a recruiter or hiring manager, it's always better to overdress than underdress, right? So because one, they can be underdressed, but we're the one that's looking for the job. So I always tell people, just be overdressed. So kind of like when I came and interviewed here with UNC system, it was on a Friday and they told me that everyone was going to wear jeans. However, I still wore my suit because I'm the one looking for the job. So Now, if you're new to the area, test drive your location. I I there have been times where I've made an appointment where, okay, my GPS tells me this and it's at 9 o'clock, but then there's an accident or there's a toll or something. And that's when, one, you're going to be nervous because you're going for an interview. And then now you're going to be late. So that makes it even worse. So get an idea and then kind of add in the traffic. Because when you go into test drive your location, you might not think about maybe like, I know Google's pretty much up to date, but there are sometimes it's hard to find, especially like, have you ever, just imagine your first time on campus here, right? You had the map, but imagine how big it is. So if you were to go in other universities, you know that, hey, even though parking is right here, but I might take 15 minutes walking just to get to the building. So just be a little bit prepared so you're not as nervous, because you're already nervous. So, if it's downtown, are you comfortable with downtown traffic? Give yourself a little bit more time. Look at your parking situation. There are even parking meters that actually will take credit cards only. And if you try to use your debit card, it doesn't work because they're only taking credit cards. So little things like that. Now with COVID, majority of our interviews are now video interviews. I tell people, clean, simple background, something that doesn't distract the interviewer, because one, you want them to focus on you. Sit up straight, sit up tall, smile when you're talking. It is hard, and I would suggest practice it with family members or friends. Learn the system. Check. The link won't work because they won't let you in, especially, but if it's going to be on Zoom, or Teams or Skype, just learn the different functionality of the system. And like I said, make Google your friend. For example, with Zoom, that you can go in and in your video setting, you can actually, there's a button that you can fix your lighting. So especially if you're in a room and it's dark, you can actually, it lightens it up. You can actually add filters. Yes, I have my filters on to make yourself look a little bit fresher. So know your system. And even with Zoom, like I can actually go on Zoom and be able to write and draw on the screen. I mean, that's going to really impress someone right there. So rent a library and office space. So if you don't have room, if you're in a one-room apartment, right? Maybe go into a library, see what time they have available. I've rented a room at I think the Keratin Library for $15, and I had it for 4 hours, and it was a big room to throw a baby shower. And a lot of the libraries have small spaces that you can actually rent for free if you're a member, or like a really cheap charge. Like I said, like at the Keratin Library was like $15. And then even if you live in apartments, some apartments have office spaces that you can rent out. So there's different options, or go to a friend's house. So during the interview, so all the stuff that you heard before is still true. Smile, eye contact, look interested, and speak with confidence. Right. So I won't get much in depth about that portion because you've heard it before. Now I will ask this though. Who has heard, and I don't want you to unmute yourself because I know we're doing that at the end, but I think the chat function where you can raise your hand, I just want to have an idea, is who has heard of the STAR method? Okay. So STAR method, it's the most common type of questions. Let me go back. The most common type of questions that hiring managers ask are behavioral interview questions, because they want to know what you've done. So a lot of times a question will start with, tell me a time, walk me through this, So when you're answering, just think of STAR, situation, describing the event or situation that you were in. Task, what task did you take to complete that? What action and what did you do? Detail the results, or what did you do, and then R for the results. So by doing this, you're providing example that you did that task, not, well, I would do this, or I could do this. You know, if the department goes, well, tell me about a time when you had an upset customers. What happened and what did you do? Well, I was working at the front desk, and another student came in upset because their account was on, they couldn't register for a class. So what happened? What did I do? So I took their information and looked in our system to see that there was a hold on their account. I checked to see what the hold was. I told the students, they got it clear on their end, and then they were able to register. So you kind of give them the whole picture, you know, the situation, the task, what did you do, and then the end result. And the end result, they were able to register for the class that they needed, and they were happy and went about their way. So when you answer, it's almost like a full circle. You answer the entire story. And then, so this causes less probing questions from the hiring department. Because if you leave certain pieces out, they're going to ask you, oh, so what happened? So what happened to the student who had a hold? Why was there a hold? So it kind of prevents all those extra questions, and then you get to tell your story one time. Now there might be additional follow-up, but it's not going to be trying to get information out of you. And that's the one thing that hiring managers don't like, is trying to pull information out of you. Okay. Another thing that a lot of people don't like is negative questions. Sometimes hiring managers will try to trip you by asking something that turn out badly. You know, naturally, we don't want to tell people that we screwed up. But the piece of it that I want you to learn from this is, what did you learn and what did you do to prevent it from happening again? True story. My last employer, we were hiring drivers internally. And one of the minimum requirement was you have to be 21. So we put a list out there. We put the requirements, got to be 21, got to meet all this stuff. So hired someone in Waco, put them through class, got the rental car, paid for the hotel, 8 hours worth of training for, you know, an entire week, had all this prerequisite, went through 2 weeks worth of stuff to find out that the person was 20 years old. So pretty much, I think when we put someone into training for drivers, it all together, it's about $5,000 to $6,000 a person. So I wasted about $5,000-$6,000. What did I do? From there, what I did was, when I pulled employees' information, I put a query in that showed me the age, so I can verify and make sure, and I don't have to actually go in and just ask, are you 21? I had it right there to show that they were at least 21 years and they did meet the minimum. So, and I could do that since we're internal, but that was my mistake, but that's what I learned from it. And this is what I did to prevent it from happening again. And I think they're still using that query, by the way. So turn it into a positive. What'd you learn from your mistake? Because they'll remember that positive piece at the end then more than your mess up, right? So after the interview, if the interview doesn't tell you the next step, ask. It's okay to follow up, but just don't be annoying. You know, one email follow-up is good. Trust me, they got your information. Sometimes they don't reply fast, just, it could be numerous ways, right? It could be because they're super busy. They haven't had, if you're working with a recruiter, it's because they're trying to get the hiring department or hiring manager to give them a decision. There are various ways. Trust me, it leaves a bad taste for a candidate if you get ghosted. And there's been cases where recruiters do just don't reply, don't say anything. And that will leave a bad taste for people. And I am not a fan of that. However, some people do that. Just take it as you weren't selected. Let's move on. And if you get rejected, consider that as a practice interview. You know, what can you do to improve on your next one? Just think of it this way. You went further than most people because you actually have the interview. Now, I was hoping, think positive. You also have to think, look, it's just as important for you to be at the right company as the employer is trying to hire the right person. And it just might not be your time then. And sometimes it could mean sometimes I've had this happen where it took a long time because they actually were like, if you might be the B candidate and someone beat you to it, but then that person turned on the job and they'll move to you. And they won't let you know that you're a B candidate, of course. However, I don't care. I got the job. Even if I'm a C candidate, I got the job and I'll prove myself and do a good job. And that's why I always tell hiring managers, do not turn down all your candidates just yet, because you never know what's going to happen to the first candidate. And if you just get through to the first interview, I mean, just like I said, make it as practice. You'll get better along the way, right?